at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've been coding since I was pretty young. And I started coding in high school. I did the IB computer science program. And I thought that it was the right thing for me. So I decided to pursue it in university. And it's been pretty good since. Since then, I've done a few internships in the engineering or software engineering realm. The first one was
Can
at
you
a
list,
lab at,
can you name the companies you have done internships?
yep, that was the first one was at a lab at UBC
Mhm.
called the Emerging Media Lab. There I worked with Unity and then using VR and AR technologies to create a product for a professor in the math department. Second one was at IBM. I was a software engineering intern at IBM for the cloud monitoring team, which is really interesting as well. Third one was while you're reaching out, it was for Tesla. That was
Mhm.
vehicle software. Still under NDA, so I'm not sure how much
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can
I
divulge
mean,
that.
I don't want to
But
talk about the technical part, just the process. So I understand that.
okay,
Yeah.
for sure. And then the most latest one is with Unity.
So let me ask you, how this, can you go through this process of internship, specifically at Tesla? Like,
Mhm.
what was the process like? How was the interview process? And when you started thinking about it, and how did you apply? How did you came to notice about the internship and moving further to the point where you got an offer from them?
Absolutely. So I knew a few kids from my school, UBC, who were at Tesla at the time. I was at IBM still, and I saw a job opening for Tesla on LinkedIn. That's what prompted me to apply initially.
Mhm.
And I did it normally, no referral. I applied through the website,
When you
applied
say
for
job,
several.
you mean internship, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, okay. Go ahead.
And yeah, and that's how I came to get the internship.
So what was the process like? You applied, and then how many rounds of interviews happened? And being from your software end,
Mhm.
what are those typical questions, like interview questions? Just vaguely, if you remember those questions, for someone who
Sure,
wants to prepare for,
gotcha.
how was the preparation for those interviews? Because I heard it's pretty tough, right? Because you have,
Mhm.
it's not like a next door internship. It's pretty sought out internship. So,
Right, you're right. It's quite competitive.
yeah.
So in regards to the interviews, they were 3 rounds. There was a technical initial screening round where they send you a coding challenge, which you
Mhm.
have to complete in a set amount of time. After that, you have two technical rounds with your hiring manager and your manager. Um, those entail technical questions as well. Lead code questions. If you're familiar with Lead Code, it's a coding site which I'm sure a lot of your audience is familiar with,
Mhm.
and questions pertaining to that mostly. So medium questions, I would say, on Lead
So
Code.
you mean most of the questions, because we are talking about engineers, right? So
Mhm.
most of the questions were technical. They were not subjective, like how is the weather, how would you,
No,
how did like, usually sometimes the questions are, okay, tell me about yourself, or for example, uh, tell us a situation where you felt very pressurized and how you came out
mhm.
of it. Were the
No,
interview,
very few behaviorals. You're right. As soon I remember the first technical interview I had with my hiring manager, which was the first one after the coding challenge. It was pretty much all technical. We jumped in the Zoom call, and as soon as I was in, he sent me a link to a coder pad, and I started coding. So none of that. Yeah,
so no bullshit, just right to the
yeah,
business.
exactly. No
Got it.
bullshit.
Yeah, the reason I was asking you this question, because yesterday I was talking to a person who was doing internship, who did internship at, or doing it, I think, on supply chain, which is more management, right? So
All right.
he was saying the questions were more behavioral, which I understand. But the day before, I was talking to a person, and I spoke to a couple of people who were mechanical engineers or something, and they were saying the same thing, like, it's right, straight to the point,
Mhm.
about questions about, engineering based question, mechanical engineering design and all that.
And that's an expected discrepancy you can see between business interviews and more technical interviews, or people
Right,
who come
right.
from a technical background. They usually get more technical sided interviews as opposed to the behavioral,
So,
which is pretty normal for this industry.
right, right. So let me ask you, like, you are doing internship at Ubiquity now.
Hmm. Unity.
Yeah, Unity. But what I understood is internship, or sorry, work culture in Tesla is like you are on Nitro versus at somewhere else. Is it a fair judgment, or most companies who behave like a startup? At least
Mhm.
I can say that, like behave like a startup. That's that's what you're going to see them.
That's a good question. And I think you're right to a large extent. It depends on your team at the end of the day. So if you're in a supply chain team, you're probably not working those crazy hours, but an engineering team for sure.
Mhm. No, no, but my question is, let's say you do an internship, and you have done internships in the past, right? Also in some other
Mhm.
companies, and I have been to a lot of companies. I have worked with a lot of interns, but what I understood from Tesla is like crazy working hours, lot of pressure, lot of work. Interns are treated as more like a full time people.
Mhm.
There's less
That's
differentiation
100% true.
versus in a company like Lockheed or GE or somewhere where interns are treated very patiently. They are treated nicely. They are less pressurized. You know.
You're right to some extent. I wouldn't say I wasn't treated nicely, but I'd say there was a lot more pressure for me to
No, when
perform.
nicely, I mean like you are in pressure. It's not like because if you go to some other companies like
Right.
GS
I
or
know what you're
where,
talking about. Like IBM, it was pretty sheltered.
right, right,
They gave
they're very
me a lot
sheltered.
of time.
Yes.
Right. Um, but yeah, for Tesla and even Unity, these more startup-y type companies, I think the culture there is established so that no matter who you are, you're being pushed to do as much as you can in the shortest amount of time possible,
Mhm.
which I'm not sure is the healthiest, but it definitely pushes you out of your comfort zone, makes you learn quite a bit.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, depends on personality of the people, right? Also,
That's
so
true too.
I'm like that. I wish I would have done internship in Tesla, which I think it would have suited me a lot. At least I would have learned a lot. But though at that time Tesla didn't existed, so it doesn't matter. And I'm not that old too, so it still is a fair game. So let me ask you this: um, how was your experience like when you came out from
Mm.
internship? And you did how long internship you did?
It was 4 months.
4 months. Okay. So 4 months internship, you came out. Did you came out as a guy who learned what, like before and after? What was the difference? Let me put it this way.
Sorry, you cut
So
out
like
midway through your
when you
question.
went into Tesla versus when you
Mm.
came out from 4 months internship, what difference did you felt in within you in terms of again more behavior like confidence, technical, everything?
Mhm. It helped in every way, to be honest, in terms of confidence for sure, in terms of technical ability, that too, because like I said, you learn quite a bit in the short time you're there, a lot. They expect a lot from you. And so
Mhm.
that sort of work culture is also ingrained in you, I feel. Um, so yeah, in all facets, I think it helped me, whether it be confidence or technical ability or even work habits.
Mhm.
It was a very helpful internship.
And 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 how about oh, let's talk a little bit about the preparation of for those technical interviews
Hmm.
from the software end because that's what your expertise is. Y-
Right.
Did you do anything different? Like, did you look out on internet and are there tutorials out there? Sometimes there are tutorials, right, where they say how to
Hmm.
prepare for interview in Tesla, and there are set questions there, or you just went through your gut feeling, or did you do some sort of a search around or ask for help or seek help through someone?
Hmm. Um, so yeah, I did all of those things you mentioned. I went on Glassdoor, looked at interview questions that were
Right.
being asked of software engineers. Um, I asked around for a few friends, two or three friends who were working there. But
Okay.
I think mostly it was just um, working at technical interviews that pertain to software engineering. So there are several websites you could go to.
Mhm.
Leadcode.com is a big one. HackerRank is a big one, and they
Okay.
organize these topics into um, different computer science, um, different aspects of computer science that might show up in interviews. So you have graphs, you have arrays, trees, etc. So just going through each of those data structures, doing questions pertaining to those data structures, and doing as many as I could before the interview really helped me.
Oh, okay. And was it the interview process or everything? You felt that it was pretty rigorous. I mean, you were there. You interviewed Tesla for first time and you got selected, right? Or
Yep,
this
that's
was
correct.
your second or third attempt?
No, this was the first time I applied.
Yeah. Because a lot of people I spoke, they had this third attempt or fourth attempt. So there were stories about what they did wrong versus the time they got selected and so forth. So
Mhm. Well,
right?
yeah, I wanted to first get a bigger name on my resume before I started applying to companies in Silicon Valley.
Mhm.
So I was mostly applying to these bigger tech companies as opposed to these smaller startup-y companies
Right, right,
before I applied to Tesla.
right. And have you had a chance to apply to other companies also? So let me ask you this question because this is very
Sure.
interesting, right? You never hear, at least not used to hear, that somebody from a computer science background is doing internship in General Motors. Mostly those
Mhm.
people will be mechanical engineers or electrical engineers, right?
I don't
Usually.
know. I mean, I disagree with you. I know quite a few people who are doing computer science or software engineering internships at
No, no, no,
General
not now.
Motors.
I'm saying in like say 10 years back, because now
Oh,
more
true.
software is being integrated into the hardware. So you see now, a lot of people that is coming up, right?
Absolutely. You're right. Yep.
So, and then you are doing your internship now, which is a gaming company, right? So,
Mhm.
did you find the difference between these two internships? Because here, there you are, you don't can't say that I don't know about hardware, right? Or you have to interact with the hardware.
That's true. Yep. Um, but in terms of tech stacks, I think it's very similar. Tesla was pretty C++ heavy. Um,
Mhm.
being a game engine, most Unity, the code base is also C++ and C heavy.
Okay.
Obviously, the applications of the code is different. The libraries and frameworks being used are different, but um, the base tech stack is more or less the same in
No, no,
terms of
what I meant
languages.
is like, for example, as you as a software engineer,
Mhm.
would you thought that any knowledge of, and I'm just throwing it out, of an
Mhm.
electrical motor or a gearbox system would have come handy, or that was not the case, or you had to learn it while you were there? Any, because hardware
Mhm.
has to run at a certain
Right.
torque or something, right?
You're
From
right. No, you're right.
so,
And that stuff is pretty well abstracted by the code, I think. The frameworks and libraries that we were using to interact with these things, they abstracted much of the lower level engineering knowledge that you might have needed. For a software engineer, I know that knowledge was definitely not necessary. And if you needed to know that knowledge, then Tesla did a pretty good job of onboarding you
okay. So there
in
might be, there
regards to that.
should be somewhere from the hardware side, somebody that you can go and ask some, because you
Yeah.
need, let's say, some parameters like, okay, this, you can't exceed that much torque, and I'm just throwing it out, right? And
Yeah,
so
you're
if you
right.
have to implement that in your code, you probably can go
You reach
somewhere
out to
and,
someone. Absolutely. Yeah.
okay. Great. So, Musa, thanks very much. But do you think there anything else I'm missing that you might want to tell about, just as I said, from the preparation perspective, or
Mhm.
when to start looking for it, and what, let's say, what not to do during interviews?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll answer these questions sequentially. In terms of when to look for it, I think the earliest the better,
Hmm.
because as you know, a lot of people are applying during this time, especially. I think the peak applying period is from August to November, at least for software engineering roles. So I think the earlier you get started, the better.
Hmm.
That's not only for applying; that's also for preparation. Um,
Hmm.
as I mentioned earlier, software engineering internships or interviews, excuse me, can be quite extensive. You could be asked anything from arrays to trees to graphs. So knowing or having an in-depth knowledge of each of those data structures is imperative for your success.
Hmm.
So yeah, in terms of starting to apply and starting to practice, I'd say as soon as possible. And in terms of what not to do, um, I think it's in terms of applying, what not to do. You could, like I said, not put it off too late, get it done as soon as possible. And then also, in terms of how you apply, um, keep your resume short. One page is the key for most tech internships or
Okay,
even
one page.
jobs,
That's what they
unless
need.
you have more than 10 years of experience. I think that's the convention. Um, and yeah, reach out to
Today,
as many connections as you have. If you can get a referral, I think that helps a lot. Um, but if you can't, like I haven't gotten a referral for any company I worked at, so you'll be perfectly fine. You need it.
Mhm. Cool, man.